Hi Yogi, and welcome to another Slow Flow with me, Oceana. In this class we are exploring a companion piece to last week's episode in which we explored a total body flow, and this of course is a total body stretch, so you could practice them completely separately, or this class is going to start exactly where the last one left off. So if you were to combine them, they form a full-length yoga practice. In today's class, of course, we will be mostly floor-based, and there's nothing in terms of props that you particularly need, but if you don't have a yoga mat that you could roll up at the end, then you might like to grab yourself some pillows or books, something to essentially just lift your sitting bones a little bit higher. And when you're ready, we'll be starting in a kneeling position, so join me there. So to find child's pose here, separate the knees a comfortable distance, keep your big toes together and walk the hands forward in front of you. If possible, rest your forehead on the floor. If that's not quite accessible to you, plant one hand or two fists on top of one another and rest your head on top of the hands. And we'll simply have a few moments to really arrive on our yoga mat. Maybe shimmying the hips from side to side to really nestle the rib cage between the thighs. And really allowing our mind to settle into the idea of practicing and staying focused for the next half hour or so. When you're ready, come to stillness, plant the left hand at the front of the mat. Slip your right arm underneath with the palm facing towards the ceiling. Really reach as far across as you can, maybe coming on to the right side of the head for support, and closing the eyes to really feel the expansion as the shoulder blades move away from the spine and create space in the back of the body. Let the inhale really deepen that stretch and the exhale soften you a little bit more into the pose. On your next inhale, press into the left hand again to unravel and change sides. So right hand goes at the front, left hand slides underneath, maybe resting somewhere on top of the left side of the head. And really reaching, expanding, moving that left shoulder forward and reaching across. On the next inhale, slowly unravel and walk the hands in to come back into your kneeling position, preparing for a little bit of a neck stretch here. So we'll start with the left hand dangling down by our side. Turn the left thumb back so that your palm is pointing away from you. Now tilt your head to the right side. And for some of you, this is already quite intense. Maybe some of you could lean the head back and intensify the stretch a little bit more. And if that's still not enough, you could bring the right hand to the top of the head and give the head a little bit more weight, so that you can find that sensation along the left side of the neck, all the way down the left side of the arm, maybe reaching the fingertips a little bit more towards the floor. Release your right hand first, then lift the head and change sides. So again, right hand drops to the sides of the hips. You're going to turn the right thumb back, point the palm away from you, and then let the left ear drop towards the shoulder first. Maybe tilt the head slightly back. And if that's still not enough, bring the left hand to the top of the head and give the head a little bit of added weight. Expand your left ear, so your right ear and your right fingertips away from one another. Release the left hand first, come back to center, lift the head. This time interlace the hands behind the back of your head, round the forehead in towards the belly button, hug your elbows in towards the side of the face. Take a few moments here to open and expand the back of the body, lengthening the spine. And then rise back up to that kneeling position here. Interlace the hands behind you. Roll the shoulders back as you lift the front of the body, pointing the chin up towards the ceiling and opening the front of the throat as well as the chest. Inhale, come back to kneeling, and then we'll take this into a little bit of a wrist stretching mobility sequence. So let's have the hands in front of the knees, and I'll say for most of these exercises, if they don't feel intense enough, you can always walk the hands a little bit further away from you, and the closer the hands are to the knees, usually the less intense that will feel. So we'll start quite conservatively, keeping the hands fairly close, and you simply start to bring your body weight forward. Optional to tuck the toes under here so that you're also adding a little bit of a stretch of the bottom of your feet and toes. And start to shimmy your weight forwards and back, pressing actively down through the knuckle at the base of your index finger. So really thinking about grounding down through the ball of the hand. And eventually hold that stretch as you lean the shoulder blades forward, reaching the crown of the head towards the front of your yoga mat, so that we are really pressing quite firmly into the balls of the hands, keeping the heels down. And lean back, sitting bones towards the heels. Now turn your palms up towards the ceiling as the fingertips point towards your knees. Again, start by simply pulsating forwards and back, lightly easing into the stretch. And if you're not feeling anything here, then you can start to walk the hands a little bit further forward. And when you're ready to take the sitting bones back, find that really deep stretch at the front of your wrist, all the way into the forearms. And let the shoulders be soft. Slowly here, lean forward to ease out. And this time we've got the palms pointing down towards the floor, fingertips again pointing towards the knees. And slowly here, finding that same movement, going forwards and back a few times, easing into it before we decide to eventually hold that stretch, drawing the shoulders back, opening the front of the body, allowing the inner wrist and the inner forearms to be lengthened by the stretch. Leaning forward to slowly make our way out of that and coming on to our heels here. Pardon me, I've somehow managed to get hair in my mouth with all this hair going on. That's unsurprising in a way. Now from here, we're going to come into a wrist exercise that I tend to refer to as starfish fingers. So essentially you're going to bring your hands together almost like fists and then separate your fingertips. It's almost as if you're splashing water into someone's face. So have the arms out at shoulder height in front of you. Bring the hands together and then separate the fingers really wide, so really expressing through the whole of the hand. And over time, slowly start to make that movement a little bit faster and even faster than that without losing that full extension of the fingertips. And then we keep going, moving faster and faster and faster and faster until our forearms are positively on fire and burning away. And then you can release that and shake the arms out for a brief moment. Come on to hands and knees, so plant your hands at the front, directly underneath the shoulders. Look back and make sure your knees are directly underneath the hips. Step this time your left foot towards the right side behind you, coming into a side bend. So for some of you, this is already going to feel quite intense. If you want to take it a little bit further, lift the left fingertips and reach the left hand across to the right side. So really finding a deep expansion along the left side of the body here. Taking just a few moments to breathe equally into both sides of the rib cage. Thinking about the ribs really expanding away from one another. And gradually here, plant the left hand down, bring the right knee back into center and swap sides. So bring the right foot towards the left side. Maybe stay here, maybe reach your right fingertips forward and across, keeping your left lower elbow soft. And again, find that lateral breath in the rib cage. Slowly plant the right hand down, bring the right knee into center, and draw your left knee forward to step the foot to the front. As always, feel free to use your left hand to shimmy the foot a little bit closer towards the hands. And because we'll come into lizard lunge, ideally step the foot a little bit more to the outer edge of the yoga mat. So really having a good amount of space for the hips here. You can be on top of your fingertips. Maybe you could slide the back knee a little bit further away from you. For some of you, if that's still not enough intensity in the hips, then you can walk the hands forward, maybe soften the elbows and come onto forearms. Allow the crown of the head to hang and maybe close the eyes. Bring your attention towards your breathing. Follow the breath in through the nostrils, down into the belly and the lungs. And think as you exhale about visualizing the breath moving out through the lower legs, through the hips. So that you're really using that softness of the exhalation to your full advantage. Slowly plant the hands back underneath your shoulders. Shimmy your back knee just a touch closer here. And then see if you could reach the left hand back. For some of you, maybe the back foot could lift and you can catch the inside of that foot and draw it a little bit closer towards yourself. So you're aiming the heel of the foot towards the sitting bone on the same leg. Finding just a few moments here to really expand and lengthen the muscles in the front of the thigh. And then possibly pressing the foot away from you to take yourself a little bit deeper into that twist and opening the left shoulder blade and the left side of the chest here. Slowly, very gently release the foot. Plant your left hand down. And this time rotate so that you turn all 10 toes to the left side, coming onto your right hip. You could step your left foot a little bit closer towards the middle of your yoga mat. That might be a bit more accommodating for most people's hips. And actually, I never know what this pose is called. I always call it Shiva Ray pose. She's one of my teachers, and there's a very famous DVD cover that she does this pose on. So I always call it the Shiva Ray pose. I'm not sure it has a proper name. So for some of you, this is going to feel super nice. Essentially, we are lengthening the right side of the waist here, really coming into quite a deep side bend and using gravity to help us sort of draw the right side of the body down. If you want to make this less intense, come onto your right forearm instead. So you still get that same sort of curve of the lower part of the body, and you can rest the left hand on the thigh or possibly in front of your chest. And just taking a few moments here to soften into whichever version of the pose you've chosen for yourself. Now slowly bend your right knee, push the floor away with your hands and come into an upright position. So you end up essentially in cow face legs, which is always a very flatteringly named pose, Gomukhasana. Plant the left hand to the floor and reach your right fingertips up and over your head. Send a little bit of body weight from your lower hand into your right sitting bone to really press that sitting bone towards the floor and reach the right fingertips a little bit more to the opposite side. So maybe even softening the lower elbow and coming a little bit deeper into that side bend here. inhale, press into your bottom hand, use the breath and your right hand to bring yourself back upright. And for me, I'm going to turn towards the back of the mat here and take my left shin parallel to the front. And I'm going to point my right knee away from the right hip. So essentially the legs will end up in a sort of 90-degree angle from one another in deer pose. And you turn over your left shin bone and see if you can plant the hands there. For some of you, that's already quite intense and you could stay here. If you're going a little bit further into pigeon pose, you can tuck under your back toes, turn the knee towards the ground, and then untuck the toes to arrive. So both of your hip points are pointing directly forward like the lights on a car. And again, there's an option here to stay a little bit taller, which is a very different experience of the pose. If you want to, of course, you can come onto forearms and deepen the intensity in the hips. If you're on your forearms or even lower than that, plant the hands back underneath the shoulders. Tuck under your back toes and shimmy the front knee all the way back to find a tabletop position here. So from there, again, we take all of this onto the second side. So the right foot is going to step towards the outer edge of the mat. We might shimmy the left knee a little bit further back into our lizard lunge. And from there, either staying on the hands, maybe walking the hands forward, or softening onto the forearms, maybe simply bending the elbows to find our version. So as I often say, there's really, nothing to the different variations in terms of levels. It can simply be a case of some of us have very different bone structure, very different limb lengths. So if you have long arms and short legs, this might feel a lot easier. And actually, I'm sort of in that club of people. So don't get too hung up on having to do a different variation or what we might think of as not the most advanced version of the pose. Slowly, when you're ready, bring the hands back underneath the shoulders. Again, it might be helpful to bring your back knee in just a touch here and then prepare for the twist. So reach your right hand back to begin with. Maybe from there you could lift the back foot towards the hands, and if you can, catch the inside of the foot and then draw the foot a little bit closer. Use your hand to help. Slowly expanding and opening the front of the thigh. Lengthening our hip flexors, especially if we're sitting for long periods of time. This can feel quite intense. And eventually here we go the opposite direction, so pressing the foot away so that we're expanding the chest, really opening the right shoulder. And it can feel quite intense on the hamstrings and glutes too. Very active stretch through the leg. And slowly here, without pinging the foot, release. Plant the hands at the front and then roll onto your left hip by turning all 10 toes to the right side. So we find our way back into that Shiva Ray pose. And again, this top foot could walk a little bit further to the center of the mat, a little bit further away from the torso. Options again, maybe stay on top of your hand so that you get a deeper stretch on the left side of the body. If you're wanting to lessen that intensity, come onto the forearm instead. And again, you can rest your right hand on the knee, maybe in front of you. If anyone does know the name of this pose, leave me a comment down below. I'd be very interested to know what people are referring to this as. Maybe it has a proper name and I just don't know. We'll make these our last few moments here. And to come out, we're going to bend our bottom leg. Press into the hands to come into an upright position. Again, we've got this sort of situation where the knees are crossed one on top of the other in cow face pose, Gomukhasana. And we'll have the right hand to the outside of the right hip, left fingertips reaching over the head to find another side bend, Kel Surprise. Press through your bottom hand to really ground the left hip towards the floor and reach a little bit more through the top fingertips, spinning the chest open. Slowly here, use the top hand, bring yourself back upright. Take your right knee, and personally I'm turning back to the front of the mat, so the right shin is going to be parallel to the front of the mat, and then I'm taking the left knee and pointing it directly away from the hip joint. So again, finding that 90-degree angle of both legs for deer pose. Planting the hands in front of the right shin to turn the torso forwards over the right thigh. Optional to, of course, come into full pigeon by tucking under the back toes, pointing the left knee towards the floor, all 5 toes pressing into the ground. And options for pigeon and deer pose are to stay on top of your fingertips, maybe to begin to fold towards your front leg, maybe even coming onto forearms or releasing the forehead all the way down onto your hands. Always very optional to go deeper. Maybe you found a place that is comfortable and you can rest there for a moment without being overwhelmed by the sensations of the stretch. And that's usually a more beneficial place to work from than going too deep, which can be tricky. Slowly from here, if you're on your forearms, bring the hands back underneath the shoulders. Tuck under your back toes and slowly slither your right leg all the way back into a tabletop position. We'll meet there. And when you're ready, slip the feet back and find your way onto the belly. Coming into Sphinx pose here, bring the forearms in front of the shoulders, separate the fingertips, press the floor away with the forearms, have your feet either hip distance or slightly wider. And make this an active Sphinx pose to begin with. So really think about pressing the hips into the floor and at the same time pulling your forearms back against the stickiness of your yoga mat. So you're really drawing the shoulder blades back. You might feel a sensation of compressing the spine and at the same time opening. It's almost as if you're sunshining the chest forward. Find just a moment to stay here, to breathe into that deep, deep opening. And then slowly bring the hands underneath the shoulders and press yourself back into a child's pose. So feel free to separate the knees or keep them together if you prefer. Let the forehead rest on the floor or on top of the hands. And really press the sitting bones towards the heels so that you are stretching out the back of the body. Slowly, if the hands are underneath the head, bring them forwards again. Come on to hands and knees, tuck under the toes and make your way into downward facing dog. So have a little moment here. Make sure that the feet are hip distance. You can have your hands a little bit wider than the shoulders. Pinky fingers might be touching the edges of your yoga mat. Very actively pressing into index finger and thumb as you soften the knees and maybe have a little walk through the legs. Really rising onto the tiptoes, pressing the opposite heel back, easing into the hamstrings and the back of the body. Maybe even shimmying the hips from side to side a few times, so you can really rise onto the balls of the feet and drop your hips to one side Let the heels go to that side as well. Bend the knees as you arrive. And then find a traditional downward dog in the center. Slowly walk the hands back towards your feet. And separate the feet so they are at least shoulder distance, if not wider than your mat. Grab hold of your elbows. And again, with soft knees, have a little sway from side to side. Let the head hang heavy here. And gradually swap the arm that's on top. Nod your head a few times, yes. So check in with the muscles in the neck again here. And then maybe shake the head a few times, no. And paint some circles with the crown of the head. And change the direction of those circles. So see if you can really let those muscles release. Now, when you're ready, plant the hands underneath your shoulders on the floor. Turn your toes out, heels in, and let your hips come all the way towards the floor. I'm going to shimmy my way a little bit further forward so that I'm not bumping into my plants. Now, for some of you in Malasana, automatically the heels will lift, and that is perfectly normal. In that case, if you can, you could roll up the back of your yoga mat and support the heels here, or you could grab yourself some books, which are also very helpful. And we'll start with a more traditional version of the pose here, bringing the elbows into the inner thighs, bringing the palms to touch in front of the chest, and very lightly pressing the elbows into the thighs to lift the chest and expand the front of the body, while the lower back is being lengthened by the squat. Find a moment to soften, maybe close the eyes completely. Plant your right hand either to the floor or grab hold of your left ankle. Inhale to reach your left fingertips up and overhead. Exhale, maybe come a little bit deeper into that twist, looking up. Then swap sides, take the top hand all the way down, either to the floor or reach across for the right ankle. Lift the right fingertips up towards the ceiling and expand the chest. Exhale, twist a little bit deeper if you want to. And slowly inhale to bring the top hand back down. Make your way onto the sitting bones. And we'll prepare for Janushirshasana. So let's start with the right leg forward. Let the left knee open out to the side. Slowly turn to face towards your right leg, flexing the toes towards your face. Plant the hands either side of the knee. Either stay really nice and tall, maybe wiggle your way onto the fronts of the sitting bones. And if you feel your lower back, and if the lower back is already rounding, then again, this is perfect time to roll up your yoga mat or grab something to sit a little bit taller onto. Otherwise, if the spine is fairly straight, you could start to hinge forward from the hips as you exhale to fold in. Again, optional to walk as far as is comfortable, as far as you can still breathe very easily. And if you are all the way at the foot, then you can catch hold of the foot, which of course some people like to do, but beware of the foot becoming a sort of goal that you strive towards. So if you're really goal-oriented person, then there is a bit of a temptation here to really catch the foot and then pull yourself forward, even if that's not what your spine would like to do. And really, it's always a better practice to stay a little bit taller, to work a little bit more with the breath. On an inhale, slowly walk the hands in, come into an upright position. And we'll open this into a wide-legged forward fold. So from here, you could have the knees bent, the feet flat on the floor, and fold in front of you so that you are starting to expand and lengthen the muscles of the inner thighs. If you're going a little bit further, you can start to straighten the legs, and really how wide or close together they are is up to you. But if you're doing this, then really think about actively flexing the toes towards your face, pressing the heels into the ground, and using the stickiness of your yoga mat to actually pull the heels back so that you're engaging the muscles in the back of the thighs and contracting the muscles to protect your knee joints. If you arrive here and you feel that you are able to lean forward with a straight spine, then you're in the right place. If you feel that your spine is already rounding and you're having a hard time even reaching the floor in front of you, then definitely lift your sitting bones up. Give yourself some pillows or books to sit on before you come into the pose. And once you're ready, you can have the hands in front of you. You could work slowly as you exhale to walk the hands forward. For some of you, there's the option to soften the elbows and come onto the forearms, or allow the forehead to come towards stacked hands or fists. So making sure that you choose a place where you can actually stay. And, my personal preference is to work with a straight spine here. So we're lengthening the spine as well as the muscles of the inner thighs, and not sort of rounding the forehead towards the floor, but keeping that length so that we can keep the breath soft and even. Slowly as you inhale, walk the hands back in towards yourself. Come back into your upright position, and we'll take this into Janushirshasana on the second side. So right hand goes underneath the right knee. We lift that knee and bring it to the inner thigh. Again, left toes are flexed, and we're going to turn the torso to point towards that front big toe, framing the leg with both hands, and possibly staying in this taller, very upright position. Maybe again walking the hands forward and softening towards the front leg. If your foot is within easy reach, and I mean very easy reach, then you can of course grab hold of the foot, but again, don't let that become a sort of goal that you are, particularly straining or overstretching to get to. Then let the breath soften you as you exhale, and find your last few moments here to breathe, to release, to let the muscles in the back of the leg relax. Inhale, walk the hands back in, come into that upright position. And here we are going to make our way onto our backside. So you can have the feet flat in front of you with the knees bent. Slowly roll onto your back body and bring the knees in towards the chest. Take your arms either in one straight line from the shoulder, or bend the elbows for cactus arms if, like me, you're slightly tight on space here. And then let the knees roll over to the left side. Now make sure that your legs are really fully releasing into the floor. So for some of you that might mean straightening the legs slightly more away from the body. And if the legs are very willing to come to the ground, then bring the knees a little bit closer towards yourself so that you're taking the twist a little bit higher into the spine. Possibly planting your left hand on top of the knees so that the knees are feeling a little bit more heavy towards the floor. Maybe turning the head towards the right side of the mat, looking towards the right elbow, and allowing the right shoulder to begin to soften towards the floor. On an inhale, lift the head first, then bring the knees in towards the chest. Hug the knees towards yourself, almost as if you're going to flatten the spine against the yoga mat. And then take this into the opposite direction. So again, start with the arms in the same position. Let the knees roll over to the right side. Choose your leg position, so either bringing the knees closer or moving the knees a little bit further away. Right hand could come on top of your top leg and give the legs a little bit more weight. Maybe the head could turn towards the left elbow. And then let the chest spin open towards the ceiling. Let the left shoulder soften. Really see if you can release any remaining tension in the body and let gravity do the work for you here. Lift the head. On an inhale, lift the knees in towards the chest. Again, hug the knees towards yourself. Really try to flatten the spine for a brief moment. And we'll close this practice in Supta Baddha Konasana. So you can have the soles of the feet touching and allow the knees to go out wide. The hands could rest on top of the belly. Maybe shimmy the shoulder blades towards the spine. Maybe roll the head a few times from left to right and really find that perfect resting position of the head. And then feel as you inhale the front of the body expanding into the hands. And as you exhale, the back of the body softening down towards the floor beneath you. Take a few moments here to really notice anything that is still present within you. So any particular emotions, any particular trains of thoughts that you're on. Any particular physical sensations that might be there. Slowly step one foot at a time to the floor, lift the knees. And then let your knees roll over towards the left side, reach your left arm over your head, turn to the left side, press into your right hand to come all the way up to seated with the eyes closed. Find a comfortable seat, so crossing the shins or bringing the heels into one line. Bring the palms of your hands to touch in front of the chest and bow the forehead towards the fingertips. Use this last moment of your practice, if you wish, to plant a sankalpa, a good intention for the rest of your day or week ahead. Maybe send that good intention to somebody else who needs it a little bit more than you do. The light in me recognizes the light in you. Namaste, Yogi. And as always, thank you so much for joining me in today's practice. I hope you enjoyed the slower pace today. Even though it's a slow flow, it's an even slower pace. And of course, if you did like it, then give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and spread the good word amongst your yogi friends. If you want to find me anywhere else in the meantime, my social media links are in the video description. And of course, if you want to let me know how your practice went today, if you've got any comments, feedback, or things you would really like to see on the channel, then let me know down below in the comments section, and I would be very excited to hear from you. Until then, I hope to see you next week for another slow flow with me. Bye, Yogi.